paying attention, doubted the position that the Holy See took on this issue. As had been stated earlier, the Pope and Hitler were actively seeking to do each other harm during the war years. Pope Pius was not a mere observer to the events of the Holocaust. And that's all I got. Thank you. As I say in my classes, any questions, comments, concerns, or threats?
I got one for you.
Dr. Rowan.
So, regardless of how I felt before or after, you convinced me that once 42, 43 hit, and they were targeting the Jews in Rome specifically, the Pope obviously did a lot to try to stop that. It seems like he gets a lot more of the critique then for not saying anything when it was happening outside of Italy. Does that seem fair? Like that's more where he's getting the attacked?
His worry as Secretary of State and when he was Papal Nuncio in Munich was primarily the preservation of the Catholic Church in Germany, because Hitler was actively trying to dismantle it. The Concordat of 1933 that he signed on behalf of Pius XI, he gets a lot of flack for that. I don't think necessarily rightly. He was a leader of the Catholic Church and acting to protect Catholics. I think he did what he should have been doing.
Yeah, because that's the way I've always, this is definitely not my area of expertise at all, but the way I've always kind of learned about it and knew about it was he was afraid, as you said, that if he made a stand directly against Hitler, against the Nazis, that would cause the Nazis to target Catholics everywhere.
Yes.
And he was trying to avoid that. But then, did it just get too close to home then, when they actually came into Rome, that he had to actually act a little more? Or was
when it got closer to home, he could act, because the properties the Vatican owns in Rome are essentially embassies. They're extraterritorial properties protected under international law. So he could, at that point, open them up. He could take direct action and help in dealing with a crumbling dictatorship in 42, 43. It was a lot easier to take direct action without necessarily provoking.
Yeah, because he could have done the same thing for Jews fleeing into Italy earlier into their territory, but with Mussolini being still mostly alive and in power, that earlier, it would have been a lot harder, correct?
Yes.
And so when we get to 42, 43, Mussolini's at least somewhat on the decline, if not fully into a decline, getting arrested by his own people. So okay, that makes sense as to why it was able to do more later on in the war.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That clears up my little bit of confusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jesse?
Oh, please.
I just had a quick question about kind of like two things, kind of. One is about the gold that the Germans ended up asking for. You said that they don't really still know what they did with that gold, right? Like they don't know what they did with it or anything like that?
I said why they wanted it.
Okay.
So yeah, no, that's all right. I wasn't clear.
And then the second thing I was curious about was, since the Germans had basically fought against the treaty in the beginning, did the Vatican ever really use that to get more leeway from the Germans to get more Jewish people in? Was there anything propounding that? Because since the Germans had gone against the treaty, you would think that the Pope would at least use that as a guise to at least gain a little bit of power, even if he was afraid that the Germans might take repercussion actions.
He had great moral authority, and I take your point, and it's a good one. But if he had opened his mouth that early in the war and made he would just be poking the bear with a stick.
Yeah.
And not having him there, and not having the Vatican acting as its own agent, I mean, it at least, you know, at the bare minimum, saved 253 people,
Yes.
bare minimum. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
All right.